So we're going to be looking into our differences today, our God-given differences. And we're going to laugh, and it's going to be a fun lesson. It's going to be a lot of interactivity. You're going to have some time, all of us, amongst ourselves, with your partner, answering some questions, coming back, and talking about it. We're going to watch a video that talks about our differences right down to the way our brains work, the way our brains function. And yes, we'll laugh a lot, but also this is very foundational to everything else that comes after this. Because if you don't understand the very differences that between men and women, then everything else, you're not going to get everything else to its fullest extent. And I'm sure we've all been, if not married for a long time, been around the opposite sex all of our lives. And we've all had that thought in our mind, how can she not see this? And the gals have had that same thought. What is wrong with it? How can you not see this? It's as clear as day. And yes, it is to you. It's as clear as day. But until you understand the God-given differences that he built into the man and the woman, nothing else is going to make sense. And those are necessary because, quite frankly, if we were both alike, one of us is not necessary. If my wife thought the way I thought, then I wouldn't need her. But I rely on her, on those differences, to help me make decisions, and she does the same thing for me. So, that as a preamble, we're going to watch this really funny video on the brain, men's brains and women's brains, and then my lovely wife here is going to facilitate, and you're in for a treat because she's one of those people. That's what she was born to do, is to teach, and she's very, very good at it. So we can watch the video now.
Well, you fill in the blanks. Okay, so now we're going to start discussing men's brains, women's brains, and how they're very different from each other. Now, I want to start with men's brains. All right, now men's brains are very unique. Men's brains are made up of little boxes. And we have a box for everything. We've got a box for the car. We've got a box for the money. We've got a box for the job. We've got a box for you. We've got a box for the kids. We've got a box for your mother somewhere in the basement. We got boxes everywhere. And the rule is the boxes don't touch. When a man discusses a particular subject, we go to that particular box, we pull that box out, we open the box, we discuss only what is in that box. All right? And then we close the box and put it away, being very, very careful not to touch any other boxes. Sorry, my Catholic upbringing got in there for a minute, but I'm not a Catholic, but I went to Catholic school when I was little. I had a nun who taught on hell like she was born and raised there. I mean, I'll never forget it, but it did me good, actually. It was a good thing. Now, women's brains are very, very different from men's brains. Women's brains are made up of a big ball of wire. And everything is connected to everything. The money's connected to the car, and the car's connected to your job, and your kids are connected to your mother, and everything's connected to everything. And it's like... It's like the internet superhighway, okay? And And it's all driven by energy that we call emotion. It's just, it's one of the reasons why women tend to remember everything. Because if you take an event and you connect it to an emotion, it burns in your memory and you can remember it forever. The same thing happens for men. It just doesn't happen very often because, quite frankly, we don't care. Women tend to care about everything. And she just loves it. Okay? Now, men, we have a box in our brain that most women are not aware of. This particular box has nothing in it. It's true. It's true. In fact, we call it the nothing box. And of all the boxes a man has in his brain, the nothing box is our favorite box. If a man has a chance, he'll go to his nothing box every time. That's why a man can do something seemingly completely brain dead for hours on end. You know, like fishing. And we love it. That's why a guy can sit in front of a TV and go. It glows. Of course, this drives our wives nuts because they'll come up and say, "Stop it! You can't possibly be watching anything!" I'm not. Go away. Now, they've actually measured this. The University of Pennsylvania a couple of years ago did a study and discovered that men have the ability to think about absolutely nothing and still breathe. You know, they connected all the wires and stuff like that and watched the brain activity, then all of a sudden, I think he's dead. Huh? You know, women can't do it. They can't do it. Their minds never stop. And they don't understand the nothing box. And it drives them crazy. Because nothing drives a woman more crazy or makes her feel more irritated than to witness a man doing nothing.
Okay, so we are actually going to go out of order, and I love this topic because I'm fascinated by the brain. I taught for 30 years, mostly high school, and one of the reasons why teaching was very interesting to me was because I could see the journey of the students and how they grow and how differently they learn and what works and what doesn't work. And so, yeah, you didn't get a packet?
No, we're on that page. Just want to make sure that you go to the page that says the
Oh, page 19.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to facilitate, and then I'm going to ask for some volunteers to read, so everybody's participating. Then Tony and I will model the answers, and then we're going to ask you to answer to each other. Sometimes we'll be like, in private, you'll answer it, and then you'll kind of show each other and see if you're surprised or you agree or disagree. So you're going to participate a lot today. Okay, so let's start with the facts. How about if, Skip, would you read the facts on the top 3 paragraphs of page 19, please?
Communicate less.
Okay, so this is not always exactly the same, but for the most part, most men tend to be stronger with spatial awareness, and women tend to be more proficient in their verbal skills. So let's continue with the box. How about if Raquel, if you read the, Skip, you read the typical male brain section, and Raquel, you read the typical female brain. Okay, so now we're going to model, and then you guys get to do it too. So, Tony, can you give us some examples of how your spatial skills are better than mine?
Well, as far as seeing the big picture, whenever we are going through a parking lot, walking through a parking lot, we were doing this just yesterday, as a matter of fact, and you were into the discussion and talking about, you know, what we just saw, and I'm watching for vehicles that are not watching for us. Yeah. And before you're about to walk out in front of somebody, I'm stopping you because you're not aware of, you're not seeing the big picture. You're more into discussing what we were happening.
And that's also the case with driving. We've deduced that it's best for him to do most of the driving, because if I get caught up with talking, or if I'm emotional, or if I'm stressed, you know, just my spatial abilities go way down. So anyway, the other one is the motor or muscle control, which is really obvious by just looking at us, who's got, you know, stronger muscle control. But you can also see it with babies, especially if you're in daycare or if you've raised your own kids. You can see how aggressive little boys are compared to little girls. My daughter works in daycare, and like in the summer, she had like 22-year-olds. 22-year-olds, like from 8 to 5. And, you know, she was constantly having to protect the girls because the boys are so physical, even at a very young age. And the girls are happy to just sit there and chit chat and pretend and play, you know, with their tea sets or their baby dolls. Of course, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, it's very typical for the boy to develop their motor skills. They're just much more physical early on and for the rest of their lives. Their muscles, scientifically, biologically, and anatomically, are just bigger. That's why women that are athletes experience a lot more injuries early on in high school and college. Women that are trying to keep up with men physically just cannot withstand that kind of impact as much as men do. We're built differently. Our hips are built differently. So anyway, and then the female example, for me, the verbal skills and the intuitive abilities. I'm gonna give you an example of the verbal skills. I heard somewhere years ago that women speak about 20,000 words a day, and men tend to speak about half or something like that. And so this was very common for us, even when I was working till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I would come home. Mind you, my job was to talk all day. I'd come home, and I was just halfway done with my words, you know, and Tony was done. So it's just not uncommon for the woman to need to keep talking a lot. And then we're also going to talk about how women also need, they're processing their feelings. Like they're releasing a lot of pressure every time they're talking. It's like we're like a teapot that's being boiled. And if the woman's not releasing that constantly, then the woman's going to explode. The woman can't just hold on to stuff. And so that ends up creating conflict. And many times when we were early in our marriage, you know, didn't recognize that. And if we didn't, you know, resolve some things and just actually let me talk it through to understand even myself, then it would get worse. So that's my verbal example. And then my intuitive abilities, I have the ability to recognize a lot of emotion in people through their facial expressions and their body language, even micro expressions. I just get
see it all.
yeah, I get a lot of cues from people. And even this last week, we were at our other group, our Bible study, and there's a lady there that she had a stroke or something, so she can't speak. So we communicate by, she can only speak like one word at a time. So we communicate with body language. And she was also sitting on this side of me, and Tony was sitting on this side. And so we were making plans. I wanted to take her to the studio. Anyway, too many details.
Well, just I know my wife can be very strong communicator, and I was worried that she was coming on too strong to the lady in our group. She's just a sweetheart lady, and I mentioned it. You know, I think maybe you're a little too strong with Melinda. You guys probably know her. She's a beautiful lady in church, and but I wasn't seeing.
There was other cues going on between us because we were sitting next to each other. So we were actually really close, and we were actually
even
touching.
If I was sitting across, I wouldn't have seen it because I just don't notice
So
body language stuff. That's just not me. But she notices every little.
micro details. We notice micro details. But my weakness is that I'm so good with micro details that I miss a lot of big stuff. I don't recognize danger when it's coming because I'm so focused into the details. So those are my personal examples. So if you would discuss with your couple, with your partner, some personal examples of for the man, spatial skills. Are you the stronger one in the partnership when it comes to spatial skills and motor skills, and then verbal skills and intuitive skills? So between you two.
Yeah. Well, you don't. I mean, we're gonna let everybody kind of get on their own, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And then if somebody has a really cool example, you can share if you want to. But we're gonna actually do this with your partner.
Talk briefly about, like on the man's weakness side, how that will typically manifest itself, or it has manifested itself, like in our relationship. And the weakness is stated as difficulty in making associations between topics, and needs time to switch between topics. And I can't tell you how many times that we've been Elaine's been sharing about something, and I'm tracking with her. And I don't know if you women realize that you do this, but it's not like you get on 95 and you go straight down to your exit and you go. No, you've got to just get off here and then get back on and then get off and get on. And so to track with that, it can be difficult. And so there are times where she will be on to a different topic, and she'll say something, and I'm trying to figure out how does that fit in with what she said a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
That's why I've got to
Yeah,
stop. I got to stop.
Very careful about what you say next, bro. Right?
It's like, I've got to stop. How does this? I'm not seeing the connection here, hon.
I'm laughing so much because I can't tell you how many times we talk, and he looks like a deer in headlights. he goes, what are we talking about? Like every time.
And because that's my weakness, and she doesn't recognize that because she thinks I'm just keeping up with her. But we laugh about it every time that happens now. Where in the beginning, first few years, she might have gotten angry at me. You're not listening.
Because he couldn't keep up with me.
You're not listening.
Yeah.
I'm trying to talk to you. And now it's just we realize that's just men and women.
Yeah.
That's just the way we are.
And I have improved, and I try to improve and try to give him the condensed version of whatever I'm sharing, so that I don't lose
She doesn't
him.
get offended if I stop her
Right.
and say, "Where can you just kind of give me an idea of where we're going, so that I can
Stay connected,
to the
engaged. Yeah.
engaged." Yeah. And so and Elaine's going to share the same on your side.
Okay, well, I just want you to notice some key words like in the strengths for global and compartmental, like the word sense, compared to the word focus. And God just created a woman to be more sensitive, and which is ideal for a mom. I mean, if you have the capacity to give birth to a child, you need to be super sensitive with a newborn. And that's just part of the anatomy of a woman, and that's why women make better moms, well, in general, than men because we are so hypersensitive of every sound, every smell, every little cue, microfacial expression. We are hypersensitive. But if there's danger, that's actually overwhelming to be hypersensitive, and that's why women tend to not do as well in war. Or like, for example, I can't handle watching violent movies at all. All of that is just overwhelming to me. For a man, it's all about honor and duty, and that's what really touches their heart. One of these books that I read helped me really understand, because to me, I feel like he's watching, violence and murder, and I just think that's just horrible, right? How could you be entertained by torture, right? But it's a man.
It's not. I'm not just watching gratuitous violence. I mean,
But a man is so motivated by honor and duty, and a woman is not. A woman is motivated by love and sensitivity and nurturing and things like that. So a man's brain is designed to focus and protect and conquer and die, even. When there's a country in war in history, it is the men who go out there and they want to die for their country and for their family. I don't want to die for my country. I want to take care of my babies. So because that's how God designed a woman to be, to preserve their families and to preserve the children. So for the weaknesses for women, I can relate so much to overwhelm, because always, even though we women have the capacity to multitask, I often was overwhelmed with work and family and church, and I always had a really hard time to balance those things. I just could not compartmentalize like Tony could. He could literally just put it aside and go to bed and go to sleep. And even, right? So even going to bed, I could not turn it off. It was so, I had to finally recognize that I just don't, that's a weakness for me, and that I have to create boundaries so that I don't overwhelm myself. So we could go into so many details on how he can compartmentalize and not get overwhelmed, and I can't. So we create boundaries so that I'm not a mess all the time.
So I'm going to go back into your mini groups,
Mm-hmm.
and then just according to these strengths and weaknesses, just talk about a scenario or an event that accentuated either your strength or your weakness, and just
And
talk
it does.
about it amongst yourselves, and then if you want to share when we come back. Yeah.
And it doesn't
Feel
have.
free to
You don't
share.
have to talk about yourself. You could say, "I see this strength in you," or "I see." Yeah, you talk about the strength of the other partner, and let the partner talk about their own weakness. How's that?
Why don't we
So
do it
maybe like,
ourselves?
yeah, we're gonna say what?
Okay, that's right.
All right.
Your picture.
So take about 3 to 5 minutes to go share a little bit based on what you just heard, and bring it home to your own marriage. I think number 3 is the most revealing, well, at least for us, because our strengths and weaknesses are the exact opposite. So we actually complement each other completely, because what he's strong in, I'm very weak at, and what I'm strong in, he is weak at. So do you want to give an example?
Of
I don't know. I don't know if we want to go there or not. So, all right, I'm just going to share one of Tony's strengths. He is very optimistic. He's a very positive guy. He has big dreams. Always, sees the good things. And my weaknesses are,
the opposite of that.
I'm very realistic. I'm very, very realistic. So because of that, we've actually balanced each other really well.
Yeah. So
And-
if I want the straight scoop with no concern whatsoever for my feelings, I'm going to go ask my wife what she thinks, and she'll tell me, regardless of
That's the honesty part.
that's-
That's the other strength.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was, you were talking about optimism versus realism.
Yeah.
So, but the other, he's talking about my strength as I'm brutally honest. Like he calls it a very, very strong moral compass, and like I can't violate my moral compass, or like the truth is the truth and I just can't handle dishonesty. And so, not that he's dishonest, but he doesn't have to be so black and white in a lot of things. And so anyway, we've grown into complementing each other and not being so extreme in both sides. So out of those 3 questions, I hope that you can recognize that those differences are actually great. They're because you become so much better together.